Shalom, shalom, shalom. This is Azariah for Ministers of Faith coming at you with another video. Today's topic, we're going to be discussing about the Black Holocaust, the hidden truth about slavery and the Middle Passage. All right, we're going to be diving deep and going and bringing out some good information about slavery and what happened to our people since it is so-called Black history. We're going to bring out some Black history, right? So first and foremost, I want to give all honor and glory to the Most High Yahweh through His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shah, who the world called Jesus Christ. So we're going to be touching on what happened to the Israelites, the so-called Blacks, Hispanics and Native Americans, mainly Blacks, Africans, uh, during the sub-Saharan slave trade and the Middle Passage going towards the transatlantic slave trade, like it. But first, let's bring out this in the book of Deuteronomy, because the Most High, He warned us about slavery, right? He gave us an opportunity to be rulers of this world, or you could be oppressed in it. Which one He gave us? He let us decide, and we went to do our own will and serve other gods, and this is exactly what happened. So we're going to start off with the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 4, and I'm going to start at verse 20, and it reads, "But the Lord hath taken you and brought you forth out of the furnace, the iron furnace, even out of Egypt, to be unto Him a people of inheritance, as ye are this day." So the Israelites, we was always in slavery, right? We was always going through some type of oppressions ever since we became a nation. We was in the iron furnace of Egypt, being sold, not being sold, but being under the oppression of the Egyptians, being slaves. It says, further foremost, the Lord was angry with me for your sake, and swear that I should not go over Jordan, and that I should not go unto the good land, that good land which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance. But I must die in this land. I must not go over Jordan, but ye shall go over and possess that good land. Take heed unto yourself, lest ye forget the covenant of the Lord your God, which He made with you, and make you a graven image or likeness of anything which the Lord thy God hath forbidden thee. For the Lord thy God is a consuming fire, even a jealous God. So the Most High, He's warning Israel. He says, take heed lest you forget the covenant of the Lord, right? And start serving other idols. It says, when thou shalt beget children and children's children, and he shall have remained long in the land, and shall corrupt himself, and make a graven image or the likeness of anything, and shall do evil in the sight of the Lord thy God, to provoke him to anger. He says, I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day. Now, this is Moses speaking to the Israelites. He's not speaking to the Arabs. He's not speaking to the so-called white people. He's not speaking to Chinese, Japanese. He's speaking to the Israelites. It says that he shall soon utterly perish from off the land, whereunto ye go over Jordan to possess it. And he shall not prolong your days upon it, but shall utterly be destroyed. And you see why right now that all the other nations, they have their land. They dwell in their own land. But the Israelites, we are serving in oppressions in our enemy's land. We don't have no land because we got kicked out of our own land, the land of Israel, and now we serving idols and being under yokes and bondage in any different nations, different landmass that we were sold unto because of our transgressions. It says, verse 27, and the Lord shall scatter you among the nations, and he shall be left few in number among the heathens, whether the Lord shall lead you. See, the Most High told us, He already told us before we even got to the land of Israel, that if we transgress and start serving other gods, then the Most High will scatter us. The other nations will come against us, meaning the Most High, He's not going to be there to protect us no more. He's not going to be there to drive out these nations that was in our land. These other nations that was in our land was going to oppress us, overcome us, be a snare and a trap to us, right? Nations was going to come in and oppress Israel and scatter us, like it happened all the time. When you read the whole Bible, Israel been a scattered people, thrown in so many different landmass, serving other nations and kings, serving their idols as well, right? Let's go to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 31 and verse 16. And it says, and the Lord said unto Moses, behold, thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, and this people will rise up and go a whoring after the gods of the strangers of the land, whether they go to be among them, and will forsake me and break my covenant which I have made with them. Then my anger shall be kindled against them in that day, and I will forsake them, and I will hide my face from them. Now, what did it mean the Most High hide his face from the Israelites? Meaning that he's not going to be there to be our God, our rock, our protector, right? He's going to hide his face from us, meaning he's looking back. He turned his back against us. And when the Most High turned his back against us, it gives the other nations opportunity to rise up and oppress Israel, because they always hate us from the beginning. They want Israel, they jealous of us, you might would say, because the Most High chose us and not them. So they will take every opportunity that they get to put Israel into bondage and yokes of iron and enslave us. It says, and they shall devour, and many evils and troubles shall befall them. So that they will say in that day, you are not these evil, it's like, yeah, are not these evil come upon us, because our God is not among us. So we would start questioning ourselves. Is the Most High even dealing with us now? Right? Is we under the protection of the Lord, Yahweh, because the other nations is oppressing us? It says, I will surely hide my face in that day for all the evils which they shall have wrought, in that they are turned unto other gods. So once we started serving the other nations, the Most High gave us over to the other nations. Here, you want to serve them? Well, look, be with them. Let them oppress you. See if their gods can save you. Since you want to turn your back against me, the person that saved you out of Egypt, and start serving idols, man. Let's go to the book of Psalms, chapter 106 and verse 34. It says, they did not destroy the nations concerning whom the Lord commanded them, but were mingled among the heathens and learned their words. See, the Most High gave us commandment. And when you read book of Deuteronomy, chapter 7, I believe, it says we were supposed to go in and destroy the nations, not to make no covenant with them. But what Israel did, they mingle among the heathens and learn their works. That means they wanted to serve, they wanted to be friends with the heathens, and they want to do after they saw from the heathens, man. They want to serve their gods, right? Israel rejected the Most High God to serve their gods. The land, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Jebusites, the Perizzites, they was serving their idols, and Israel wanted to be among them to serve the idols as well. It says, and they served their idols, which were a snare unto them. Yea, they sacrificed their sons and daughters unto devils, and shed innocent blood, even the blood of their sons and of their daughters, whom they sacrificed unto idols of Canaan. And they learned, and the land was polluted with blood. This were they defiled with their own words, and went a whoring with their own inventions. See, Israel always decided to go off. Therefore was the wrath of the Lord kindled against his people, insomuch that he abhorred his own inheritance, and he gave them into the hand of the heathens, and they that hated them ruled over them. And you see that right now. Israel right now is serving under the hand of our oppressors. the hand of the so-called Edom, Caucasian people, the Edomites that the Bible speaks about, right? The children of the devil. We are serving them. It says that enemies also oppressed them, and it says, and they were brought into suggestion under their hands. So we are serving our enemies, right? Let's go to the book of Psalms, chapter 83. Let's see who our enemies are. Let's start at verse 2. This is the book of Psalms, chapter 83 and verse 2. It says, for lo, thy enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted with thy hidden ones. See, the enemies, they come together, right? They come together to see how they can further oppress Israel. How can they keep them in yokes and bondage and mental slavery? How can they continue to keep the Israelites destroyed, blinded, walking in darkness? This is what they do, and he's hitting secret counsels. It said they had said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation. And this is one of the crafty counsels that they came up with, is by changing our names from the Israelites to Black, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Right? Let them not call them, let them not call them what the Lord called them, but we're gonna call them Black people, Africans, nothing but spits, niggas, Negroes, colored people, right? Let's call them that. Latinos, Indians, right? It says savages. These are the names that the oppressors have named us. They even took their name and planted on us. Now we be calling ourselves by their our last names by their names, right? It says that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. Now, is any other Israelites call themselves Israel? No, besides the people that's waking up in the last days. But we was once, as a nation, we knew who we were. We knew that we were the Israelites. But now these nations came together and they said, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel be no more in remembrance. And that's why our people are destroyed today, because we have no remembrance of who we are. That's why we hate each other. That's why we serving their idols. That's why we are basically in their churches, serving their gods, doing after the works of the heathens, not keeping the Sabbath days, not keeping any of the laws that the Bible commands us to keep. All right. It says, verse 5, for they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom, says so-called white man, the Ishmaelites, Arabs, Moab, Chinese, and Hagarenes, Africans, Gabar, African, and Ammon, African, and Amalek, like the so-called Jewish man. The Philistines, Africans, with the inhabitants of the Tyre, Africans, Ashur, the Turkeys, also is joined with them. They have hope in the children of Lot, Selah. So all these nations are coming together to keep us oppressed. All these nations coming together to keep us in slavery, in bondage, in servitude. Let me show you a picture about with all the nations coming together to oppress Israel. I mean, how many captivities we've been in, the Israelites been in since we became a nation. Check this out. It says we was in Egypt for 430 years. Half of the time we was in slavery. We was in Mesopotamia for 8 years in slavery. Moab, 18 years in slavery. Canaan, this is a book, just when you read a book of Numbers, right? We was, not Numbers, the book of Judges, where you see the order of oppressions that we was in because Israel went off to serve other idols, right? The Canaanites had us on oppression, right? For 20 years. That's in the book of Judges, the 4th chapter. The Medians have us in oppression for 7 years. That's in Judges, the 6th chapter. The Philistines had us in oppression for 40 years. That's in Judges, the 13th, right? And after that, we went back into captivity under the Assyrians in 1722. You read that in the book of Second Kings, Lakia. The 15th chapter and the 17th chapter. Then Babylon came in, right? The book of Second Kings, the 24th chapter, 25th chapter, Babylon came and oppressed Israel and took our people into captivity, right? That's in 605 BC. The Persian came in. When you read Daniel the 6th chapter, right? Persian took over Babylon and oppressed Israel, right? That's when you read the book of Esther, Ezra, Nehemiah. We was under the slavery of the Persians, right? Under Cyrus, Darius, Ashur, Alexerxes, Slakia, right? Then after that, the Greeks came in. We was under the oppression under the Greeks in 331 BC, right? Until under John Hyrcanus, we got the independency of the Hasmonean dynasty, right? We got the independency, and as we start doing our own thing. Then after that, Rome came in and oppressed us from 63 BC to 70 AD. Really, 135 AD, right? That's when the Jewish revolt, the end of the Jewish revolts, right? But 70 AD is when Israel was scattered throughout the nations, right? A lot of our people went to Africa in 70 AD, right? Let's go to the book of Maccabees real fast. Right. Let's go to the book of Maccabees. Hold on. This is a book of First Maccabees, chapter 2 and verse 10. It says, What nation have not had a part in her kingdom and have gotten of her spoils? So what nation have not took a part of the Israelites and put us in slavery? What nation have not did it? We just seen that all these nations came upon us and had us in slavery. From the time we came out of Egypt until now, Israel always been enslaved. That's why when you read the book of Jeremiah said that Israel is a homeborn slave. Why he so spoiled? Right? So from 70 AD all the way until now, Israel been oppressed. We've still been oppressed. So what happened after 70 AD? What happened to the Israelites? Where did they go? I'm going to show you that we went to the west coast of Africa after 70 AD. Let's get that real quick in the book of Luke, chapter 21, verse 20. What happened to the Israelites? Let's see what Christ, Yahweh Shah, had to say. It says, And when he shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. So when you see Jerusalem compassed with the Roman army, and this happened in 65 BC to 70 AD, when the Romans besieged Jerusalem, right? It said, Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains. Now the mountains represent Africa. When Israel always was under oppression, they will flee to Africa. When Christ was under oppression between of Herod, and Herod wanted Christ dead when Christ was born, where did Christ go? To Egypt, right? Under oppression under the Syrians, what happened? The Israelites, they went to Egypt, right? Under oppression from the Babylonians, when the Babylonians were testing us, what happened? Israel went to Egypt. They always go, but they always trying to go to the Egypt, to Pharaoh or something for comfort, right? So after 70 AD, Israel left Jerusalem and went where? To Egypt. That's what he said. That's what Yahweh Shah called it, the mountains. It says, let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries into thereunto. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written must be fulfilled. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days, for there shall be a great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So after 70 AD, we was what? Killed by the sword. A lot of Israelites fell from the Jewish revolts, the ones that stayed back, and some that was captured, we was captured into the and be sold into other nations. Like when 700 came past, you had the transatlantic slave trade. Rome had a lot of Israelites in slavery, fighting in fighting in the, I forgot what the place called, but when you go to Rome, you see that we was fighting. They had Israelites fighting against each other there, right? But yeah, it says, and it shall be led away captives into all nations. So by the time we left Africa, I mean, not Africa, Jerusalem, a lot of our people was sold into all the different nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down from the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And right now, you see people in our land, right? Now let's bring this out. This it's a book called From Babylon to Timbuktu. It's going to show you more proof that once we left Jerusalem, we fled into Africa. It says, in the year 65 BC, the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem. In 70 AD, General Vespasian and his son Titus put an end to the Jewish state with great slaughter during a period of the military governors of Palestine. Many outrages and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people. During the period from Pompey to Julius, it had been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa. So where did we go? We went where Christ told us we went, to the mountains, to Africa, fleeing from the Roman persecution and slavery. The slave market were full of black Jews. See, we had a lot of people that was captured, thrown into captivity and slavery. But a lot of the Israelites, they fled unto Africa, the west coast of Africa, and there we stayed until we was transported here to America. But during the time of being in Africa, what happened? We were sold by the Arabians. The Arabians came up against us and put us in slavery during 700 AD, right? During the Ottoman Empire, or the rise of Islam, right? Let's get this real quick. I see how people was living during that time. It says the black Jews had an advantage over the African tribes. They carried their culture, history, laws, and written records with them. This assured them a constant predecessor from the stability of the black Jewish culture. The Jews were not absorbed into that autochthonous populations like here. In fact, the Jews absorbed some of the native tribes. That means we isolated ourselves. We wasn't trying to mingle with the African tribes. It says the Jews made use of every opportunity. They were an industrious and skillful people. In the Jewish Ghanaian states were found kings, princes, governors, general secretaries, treasurers, revenue agents, judges, architects, engineers, doctors, historian, language interpreter, mathematicians, jewelers, sculpture, masons, carpenters, painters of art, goldsmith, leather workers, potters, armors, settlers, blacksmith, horticulturists, and etc. So we wasn't over there like how the white people would say that we was out there swinging on trees and vines, looking like Tarzan, man, looking like a black Tarzan, right? We had our own culture. We had our own kings. We did our own thing over there, man. We was not no basically barbarian savages over there just surviving off eating each other and cannibalism, man. Right? We had our own kings. We were skillful. We knew how to come together, and we knew how to build. Just like when we came over here in slavery, who invented all the things that you see now? Majority of all the things you see now, black people invented during slavery, right? White people take credit of it because we was already like this before we came over here during the transatlantic slave trade. So our people, we was living good. But what happened? What happened between this time period when we was living in Africa and had our own communities and had our own mathematician, jewelers, sculpture, mason, carpenters, and stuff like that? What happened? Well, you had something called the trans-Saharan slave trade, the rise of the Islam slave trade, the Arab slave trade, however you want to call it, man. Let's look this up real quick. Give me a second. Go look up the trans-Saharan slave trade real fast. All right, it says the trans-Saharan slave trade. Let's look at Wikipedia. The trans-Saharan slave trade, also known as the Arab slave trade, was a slave trade in which slaves were mainly transported across the Sub-Saharan. Most were moved from the Sub-Saharan Africa to North Africa to be sold into Mediterranean and Middle Eastern civilization. A small percentage went in other direction. Estimated of the total number of black slaves moved from the Sub-Saharan Africa to the Arab world ranged from 6 to 10 million, and the trans-Saharan slave trade routes conveyed a significant number of this total, with one estimate tallying around 7.2 million black slaves crossing the Sub-Saharan from the mid-7th century until the 20th century, when it was abolished. And it's still going on now. They just basically name it under different names in slavery. Now they got it forced labor, human trafficking, right? That's all the stuff they doing now in the upper North Africa, right? Our people are still being captured and sold into bondage now. And so that the Arab managed to operate the trans-Saharan slave trade, although Berbers were also actively involved. Along the Sub-Saharan slave trade, Turks, Iranian, European, and Berbers were among the people traded by the Arabs, with the trade being practiced throughout the Arab world, primarily in Western Asia, North Africa, East Africa, and Europe. So you see that the trans-Saharan slave trade, the Arabs rule, right? From the 7th century, I think it started like the 650 BC. The Arabs rule, and they was conquering different nations and put them in slavery. And that's how you got many of our people now worshiping the Iraq and Muslim, worshiping Allah, right? These people, our people now in the west coast of Africa, they want to be so-called Muslims because they have no idea that the Muslims had our people in slavery, and that's how we learned Islam, right? The Arabs taught us Islam and their religion and how to be a Muslim during slavery. A lot of people don't know that, right? So let's go back. Now let's get this video real quick.
The first civilization to take Africans out of this continent were the Arabs. And they took Africans from the eastern coast. And it's sad that in that part of the world, There are not many Africans who remain because it was in the business of the Arab enslaver to castrate Africans. Then the Europeans came. Our ancestors built the United States of America. Our ancestors built Europe. And when slavery had lost its shine and sheen, the Europeans abolished it. But they replaced it with yet another pernicious enterprise, the colonization of Africa.
So you see, our people went from the trans-Saharan slave trade and all the way up to the the transatlantic slave trade, right? From the Arab slave trade to the European slave trade. Now I want to bring out this book called The Black Holocaust, right? The Black Holocaust. Let me get the cover of the book first. It's like I didn't get the full cover, but it's called The Black Holocaust for Beginners, right? By S.E. Anderson, all right? Now it's going to open up to the first page. Page you want right here. It says the slave trade, it says the slave trade was not a static, however astronomical. The slave trade was people living, lying, stealing, murdering, dying. The slave trade was a black man who stepped out of his house for a breath of fresh air and ended up 10 months later in Georgia, right? With with bruises on his back and a brand on his chest. See, this is when the Europeans had us. They took us from west coast of Africa and brought us in and then branded us. It says the slave trade was a black mother suffocating her newborn baby because she didn't want him to grow up to be a slave. And just imagine that a mother had no other choice but for the love of her baby and children, that she didn't want them to grow up to be under oppression, that she would just kill them, suffocate them. She said, I'd rather you to die than be under the hand of our enemies. I'd rather to kill you myself than let another man take you from me, enslave you, torture you, rape you, castrate you. You know, that's a hard thing to do, especially for a mother, man, for the care and the love of her kids, right? Let's bring this out. Let's go to this page right here. It says, I'm gonna start off with the highlighted part. It said the Arab slave trade lasted from 652 AD, the Arab Nubian slave treaty, until 1890. It didn't truly end until 1911. Africans captured in war by other Africans were sold into slavery for money or things, porcelain, milk, silk, and others. Fine fabric from the Asia that powerful and corrupt African nobility desire. So you see, it says that a lot of people were selling each other, but that's just what they say. We know for a fact that it was not people, that it was basically the so-called Arabs, not Arabs, Hamites, right? We're going to get that later. That Hamites and the Arabs team up against us, and they sold the Hebrews into slavery. They knew exactly who we were. Like I said in the book earlier, from Babylon Timbuktu, that we was amongst the African tribes, but we stayed to ourselves. So the African tribes, they knew exactly who we were, right? It's not hard to tell that we are different people from the Africans, right? We eat different, we drink different. We don't drink no cow pee or wash up in cow piss, right? We don't eat unclean things. Our people was keeping the laws, the statutes, commandments. We was smarter than they were, right? So don't think that Africans was selling to other Africans, right? We was way better than that, right? Let's go bring this up real quick. Let me see what pages I want next. it says, it's like, yeah, he's in man go fast. It says that the raids and carnivals of captives. It said the Arab slavers would go inland and invade at nightfall, just as the villagers were having their communal dinner. Whose I said those who resisted or tried to run away were shot. When the Arabs encountered more warlike Africans, they used the divide and conquer method. Right, the divide and conquer method was they would start up some plots against the Arabs, against the Africans and the Hebrews, and then they'll make us war with each other, right? And the Hamites will capture the Arabs, the Hebrews, and sell them to the Arabs. It says the Arabs would stir up conflict between the two groups, then lend their support to one over the other. The African victors traded their captives for Arabs trinkers, beads, and cloth. The Arabs carnival of enslaved Africans grew. The Arabs were killed most of the adult men because they had resisted and would most likely continue to resist. Their death served to put fear in the hearts of the living. The slave would take enough captive so that a good number would survive for selling. They were then divided into smaller, more manageable groups, which set out on different routes back to the coast. The captives were forced march all over the countryside as the Arab slave gathered more captive. Young men, women, and children of all ages were bound by the hand, either with hemps or leather, which grew tighter as the time went on. And by nets, yokes yokes of each other have other and forced to walk for hundreds of miles through dense forests, savannas, mountains, and waterways. If they got sick, they were left behind, often still bound or yoked to another sick or dead person. To make matters worse, they were constantly whipped, and all men, women, and children were treated as beasts, or beasts of burden, carrying loads of ivory and other African treasures. So you see here that how they treated us, man. They treated us like like a beast. Had us yoked up in arms, man, and your arms around our neck. That's mean chains around our neck, right? And when you read Deuteronomy chapter 28, real fast, let's go to the book of Deuteronomy real fast. Let me move this out the way. Let's go to the book of Deuteronomy. And all this is Bible prophecies. Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 48. It says, therefore thou shalt serve thy enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. And the yokes of iron upon our necks is what you saw there, that how these people had us in slavery with yokes of iron upon our neck, walking in chains, right? And walking for miles and miles and hundreds of miles with another slave captured that could have been dead, could have been sick, and you had to drag that person, right? And the Arabs didn't give a damn about us. That's further proof that it was just not Arabs, Africans selling Africans. Let's go to here. It says slavery was due to raids of Arabs and Hamites on Negroes community. So you see how that is more evidence and proof that it wasn't just Arabs, Africans selling Africans. It was Hamites. The Africans are Hamites, right? The son of Ham, right? Selling Negroes, right? The Israelites, the son of Shem. We're two different nation of people, the Hamites and the Negroes. Just because we share the same complexion, sometimes the Hamites is way darker than us, right? But since we share the same melanin and complexion, everybody wanted to just put us together as one. No, it was Hamites selling Negroes, selling Hebrew Israelites into slavery, right? And it was working with the Arabs. All right, let's bring this down. Let's get some more. This is a lot to read. All right, this book, it got a lot of information in it. All right, let's bring this out. It says, even on the reality of the Muslim slave trade was 2 to 1, 2 to 1 woman to fill the demands for concubines. So they'll take out women and make them concubines, right? Make them for their own pleasures. It says we can reasonably assume that many of the leaders of the resistant movement among enslaved African were women. This gives us a new and different perspective on slavery. The slave revolts, it was not just about the destruction of African manhood, it was also about the destruction of African women. The availability of concubines, moreover, offered a Muslim man a measure of relief from the unhappiness of marriage. So these Muslims, because they didn't had a good marriage with their wives, that they would take our people and make them concubines. Their wives was going off, so they'll take our people and do what they do their pleasure, their desire against our women. It says that the sexual that the sexuality ungratifying Slakia before purchasing a slave whom he intended to use as a concubine. A Muslim man was careful to make sure that she was responsive to his amorous advance. This could be managed in the prophecy of special stalls that were set aside in slave market for the close examination of female slaves by prospective buyers. Here, men would take liberty with the helpless girls 12 to 18 years old in a manner that they would not dream of when courting. So they would take these young women, young Israelite women, and they will have their desires against them, man. Just filling out their pleasure and lust, doing what they would do to them that they could not do to their own wife at home, right? Taking out all their sexual desire against our people, right? And this is before they would buy them. This was like a more of a test run, right? Oh yeah, let me try this out before I buy you, make you my concubine. Let me see all the things I can do to you. And this is what the Arabs was doing, man. You think our people had it worse in the translated slave trade here in America, in the Western Hemisphere? No, it was way worse over there. When the Muslim slave trade was way worse. Remember, they had us for over 1,000 years in slavery, right? Killing us, castrating us, chopping down our private parts, right? Taking our women, raping them. You think our women was submitting to that from the ages of 12, right? This is wicked, and this is what our enemy does because they live by no law. They don't live by the laws of the Most High. They do their own thing. They serve their own God, and they in wickedness, right? But yet our people still want to be Muslims. Our people still want to be worshiping up these damn rocks of Allah, right? Our people are lost and destroyed. And this is the reason, and this is why I'm bringing this up, because, like I said, it's so-called Black History Month. It's so-called Ramadan season that our people want to partake in, right? This is time to wake up and realize that the reason why you're celebrating Ramadan and want to be a Muslim because our people was enslaved there. Our people was castrated. Our woman was raped. Right? Let's go to another page real quick. Let's get this. Right. So this is why our people was basically Slacky, hold on, give me a second. I gotta add some more pictures to this. So what you see here is what the Muslim was doing to us, and all the things they was doing, and it's doing the transatlantic slave trade. Let's get to this real quick. Hold on, give me a second. All right, the Agas, Slaki from my pronunciation, the centrally of units in Muslim society. It says castrated male slave Agas or units were essential to familiar peace, protection, and order in many wealthy Muslims' household. Units were considered so valuable that they sold for almost 10 more times, 10 times more Slakia than castrated male slave, Africans or Europeans, non-castrated Slakia. That so basically that the castrated male African males was basically sold more, and they was given to wealthy Muslims, right? Like the princes or people that was living in wealthy estate and palaces and stuff like that, and they would castrate us, right, and have us serve in their kingdom and their under their palace, under their rulership, close to their wives or whatever, right? And they was do this, they were doing this to little young boys also. It says back to where I left off, it said, in spite of their high price, units popularity referred as to a condemn, or teacher or tutor were seen by a hundreds or thousands in many parts of Muslim society. Eventually, the craft or surgery became so profitable. Hallmarks often copted priests throughout Upper Egypt, the Sudan, and Ethiopia. They would amputate the scrotum and penis of 8 to 12-year-old boys, Africans boys, 8 to 12-year-old African boys, so completely that it was called leveling with the abdomen. Or over the hundred of years and hundreds and thousands of operations, the survival rate ranged from 1 to 10 to from Slovakia, from 1 in 10 to 1 in 30. 1 in 30. The young boy of Burkina Faso were the most sought after because the extreme poverty and orphan children due to the constant attacks upon their people. But they also came from the Fur, Kordofan, Dongolo, Slovakia, Dongola, in towns of Ethiopia, leaders known as Slovakia. But anyway, they will take boys from the ages of 8 to 12, and they will take them and castrate them, make them units, right? And it was all this happened every single time Israel was going through slavery, that they was castrating us, man. This happened in the scriptures. Let's go to the book. Let's go to the book of 2 Kings. Let's go to the book of 2 Kings, chapter 20 and verse 12. Watch this. What does Isaiah said to Hezekiah? 2 Kings chapter 1, I'm gonna start verse 13. And Hezekiah hearkened to them and showed. So this when the Babylonians came to Hezekiah, because they heard that he'd been sick and the Most High healed him. It says, and Hezekiah hearkened to them and showed them all the house of the precious things, the silver and the gold and the spices and the precious ointment, and all the house of his armor, and all that was found in the treasurers. There were nothing in his house, nor in all his dominion, that Hezekiah showed them not. Then came Isaiah the prophet to Hezekiah and said unto him, what say these men, and and from whence came they unto thee? And Hezekiah said, they are come from the far country, even from Babylon. And he said, what have they have seen in the house? And Hezekiah answered, all the things that are in my house they have seen. There is nothing among my treasure that I have not showed them. Then Isaiah said to Hezekiah, hear the word of the Lord. Behold, the days come that all that is in thy house and that which thy fathers have laid up in store unto this day shall be carried into Babylon. Nothing shall be left, said the Lord. So Hezekiah wanted to be like MTV Cribs. He wanted to show the people that he's the man. He wanted to show the people what was in his house, how big his house was, all the treasures and gold that was in his house. So Isaiah said, look, these same people that you showed was going to come in your house and take everything. Come and destroy it and take everything to Babylon. Not only that, he says, verse 18, and thy sons and that shall issue from thee, which thou shalt beget, they shall take away, and they shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. See, they were also making us eunuchs and castrating us in Babylon. From this, what happens in the first wave when Daniel and the three holy children went into captivity under Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and they made Daniel and them eunuchs. Watch this, book of Daniel, chapter 1, and I'm gonna let's start at verse 6. Yeah, I'm gonna start at verse 6. It says, among these, and now among, no, let me start at verse. I'm gonna start at verse 3. Now the king unto, sorry, then the king spake unto Aspenaz, the master of his eunuch, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel and the king's seed and the princes and of the princes, children in whom was no blemish, but well favored and skillful in all wisdom and cunning and knowledge and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, in whom they have teach the learning of the tongue, the learning in the tongue of the Chaldeans. So the king Nebuchadnezzar, he wanted this, the best of the best. And the king appointed them a daily provision in the king's meat and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. Now among these were the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave name. So this people, this man, he was a prince of the eunuch, and who was under him? The children of Judah in the first wave was, and who was among them? Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Right, and this is how you know that they became eunuchs. Right, it was prophesied, and Isaiah prophesied this. Right, no, we're gonna stop right there. Let's go to the book of Acts. I'll show you that our people was eunuchs in the Bible. The book of Acts, chapter. Now, this was a man that was coming from Ethiopia. All right. Here you go, right here. Acts chapter 8 and verse 26. It says, and the angel of the Lord spake unto Philip, saying, arise and go towards the south, unto the way that goeth down from Jerusalem into Gaza, which is desert. And he arose and went, and behold, a man of Ethiopia. Right, there was a Jew coming from Ethiopia, the land of Cush, a eunuch of great authority under Candace, queen of the Ethiopians, who had the charge of all her treasure, and had come to Jerusalem to worship. So this Jew came over to worship, and he was what? A eunuch under the authority of Queen Candace, the queen of Ethiopia. So you see, our people, they was made eunuchs. They was being castrated. This all throughout the Bible, man. This ain't nothing new. That these nations will come against us and take our people and castrate them and put them in yokes and bondage and slavery, right? let's go get this other image. Let me find it. What I'm looking for. This right here. All right. Slack it. Give me a second. All right. So it says, I'll read the highlighted part. Well, I'm read up top. It says, imagine the trauma, pain, screams, and factions, confusion of little African boys crying for their mother, fathers, brothers, sisters, grandmothers, somebody to come and rescue them from this nightmare. Just imagine the pain, the trauma, the things that our brothers was going through, man. Our people was going through, knowing they about to get castrated and knowing that their private parts about to be ripped off of them. They would never grow up and have babies and get and be married and have children, have a family, right? They will always be somebody's slave. They would always have to work under the hand of their oppressor all their lives, never experience a family, having a wife. Just imagine the trauma that put on somebody. It says, and if you survive, imagine growing into manhood with confusion, with confused sexual urging that had to be subliminal, no, Slakia, sublimated into busy details of the daily life of your master's woman, his business, his public affairs. Now, this is different. This is why watch this. It said, in contrast, white boys were actually units because the castration process was only cutting the tip of the penis and leaving the stroller intact. Most were able to have sex, and a few were even allowed to have wives and concubines. See, the white people, they was treated different, right? This is how you know that they hated the children of Israel. They hated the Israelites. They didn't want us to basically have no reproduction system, right? They took our thing way off, but the white people, the white enslaved men, they was still they was just they can still have sex and have wives and have a family, but we couldn't. It said the beastly act um, of castrating African boys was a part of Muslim slavery. From the early as the 900 AD, this for a thousand years and hundred of thousand of African Angas were castrated. This impacted not only upon them, but upon the men and women they served. Centuries of enslaving Africans left Arab traders a cold and hollow person, right? It was look, it said it was cold, hollow, who either through natural birthright or century of intermarriage, it's like an intermarriage, often was of African descent himself. Even so, he and his sons consort saw the enslaved African as no more than a sex slave or two-leg oxen or cow, cheap beast or burden or pleasure. And there were plenty more where they came from. So they was basically had us under this beastly acts, meaning that they would treat us like animals. They would treat us like animals. They didn't see us as human, and that's how they treating us now. We are one fifth of a human, something like that, right? This is how they would treat us back then, not as human beings. They was taking our manhood from us, dehumanizing us, acting like we are animals and beasts and savages, so they can treat us the way they treated us and have no type of guilt or shame, right? Let's go to the book of Deuteronomy. Let me answer it out here. Let's go to the book of Deuteronomy. Chapter 28 and verse 41. All right, this is a book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28 and 41. It says, thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. So it says we shall beget sons and daughters, but we should not enjoy our kids. Why? Because our kids will go into captivity. These other nations will invade us, our land, and take us into captivity, right? It was no way that we can enjoy our kids growing up with our family, our children, when these so-called Arabs and our enemies will come into our land and take our kids and put them in slavery, right? And put them in slavery. Let me get this real quick. I don't know if I had it on here. Give me a second. Nope. Let me see something. Give me.
The Arab slave trade went on for.
Oh, it's like it. All right, here we go. Check this out. And let it load up a little bit. So we wouldn't enjoy our family because they will go into captivity. Check this video out.
Slave trade went on for 1,300 years and killed 28 million Africans. Yes, 1,300 years. They enslaved Africans, Europeans, and apparently South Asians. 80% of the people they were enslaving were African, though. The Arab slave trade wasn't as racialized as the slave trade we know in the Americas, but it was still brutal. Slave trade started in the 6th century and ended in the 20th century. 1,300 years, 1,300 to 1,400 years of slavery. It didn't end until what? There's no really end date, but it said 1981. And it wasn't outlawed until 2007. What the fuck? So in the Arab slave trade, it wasn't as labor heavy. It wasn't as labor intense as the American slave trade. So that's why I feel like it went on so long. They would take more women than men. For every one man, it was 2 women. The women would be sexually exploited. They would be used as concubines. They would be used as any type of sex slave, also maids around the house. And as for the men and boys, they would be castrated so they wouldn't be a sexual threat. They saw African men as a sexual threat. They saw them as sexual deviants, so they would they would castrate them. They would use them as security. They would use them as guards. They would use them in the military. They would also use them for some labor things, but not as intense as it was in America. But it was not sweet. 90% of the men and boys that they would castrate would die. They would die. So 10% of them were making it past there. 28 million Africans dying during this period of time, during that 1,300 years. Do y'all know how much 28 fucking million is? It's a lot. 80% of their enslaved peoples would die. 80% of them. And me personally, I was curious on why it went on so long, so I started to look it up. It was a lot of reasons on why it went on so long. But when I think about slavery, I think about the American slavery, how brutal it was, how labor intensive it was, how evil the people were. You know, slavery is evil regardless, but it was so.
Like it. Slavery in Arab region persisted informally until the late 1790s. And this is now you see a video of these Arabs capturing black men and selling them in the slave market. Now that don't make you mad. I don't know what will. I don't know what will make you mad. If that don't make you mad, seeing our people sold to the other nations. Get this video off. Right? Seeing our people captured, sold to the different nations to be under yokes and bondage. Right? That's our people they doing it to. That's our people they doing it to. Right? Now our people, we are basically just destroyed that we don't even care no more. But that's what the most High care. The Most High got real judgment for these people, for these nations, right? Let's get some more. Let's go to um. All right, give me a second. Let me get it to it. All right, let's go to. Let me find this video. Find this page. Where are you? All right, here we go. Slocky, here we go. It says, by the 1600, the people were on the alert for the white invaders. Now, this jump ahead from the transatlantic slave trade. Now you go now from the 1600s, you got what's called the transatlantic slave trade, where white Europeans will come into the African villages where our people was dwelling at, and the Israelites was dwelling at, and they will take our people and put them in slavery. It says by the 1600s, the people were on the alert for the white invaders or the Arabs invaders. So we was looking out for both ends. Where are the other nations at? Coming and trying to get us, right? These white invaders, the Caucasians, the devils that coming to invade our land again and put us in slavery. Or where are the Arabs at that continue to have our people in slavery and castrating our women, killing our people, taking out young boys and girls and making them concubines, enslaved in the palaces. It says, or other African traders, many villages, that's the Hamites, many villages and kingdoms set up lookout posts. Let me read this again, because it says many villages and kingdoms set up lookout posts a mile or two from the village or city states. Sentries train. Now, sentries are talking about warriors or military men. Sentries train themselves to see in the dark like panthers. Some develop the ability to smell a group of white men from afar. And this is easy to smell a white man, especially if you never seen a white man before, or never been around them, and you start seeing them, you could smell the difference, right? They got this. White people have a smell to them. We all know that smell, like everybody knows what we say when we smell a white man, a sweaty white man, right? It says part of the oral history told to children were tales of being snatched by an evil white ghost or monster. So they will call these white people a ghost or a monster or a devil. All over Africa, mothers and fathers made it their duty to warn their children not to stray too far from them, even when they were out working in the fields or hunting or traveling. Villages to village in Africa during these enslavement times, it was not a question of paranoia being forever taken away from everyone and everything was real. So imagine that, how people were so scared that they couldn't even leave their development, their village, because they was afraid to be captured by the white invaders or the Arabs. Imagine living in fear all your days of your life of being taken away from your family, having your children taken away. Imagine having your children go out there to labor in the field to bring some food back home, and he never come back home. You're crying day and night for your son and your daughter to come back home, knowing that they could be taken. You're worrying, can't sleep, stressed, you're depressed, right? You stressing yourself out and you end up dying yourself. Or you going out there trying to look for them and you get taken. You get taken away. Imagine the pain and trauma that put on our people, the fear of losing your family, right? It was very real for our people, right? Let's get some more. What's next? I want. It says by the late 1600, European slave traders had become the scourge of Africa. They would travel up the key rivers like the Gambia or the Congo and raid villages and whole kingdoms. They would overwhelm the villagers with their cannons and rifles. They would, as they had learned from the Arab slavers, attack at dinner time or just before sunrise, right? They would set fires to parts of a village and force men and women and children to run from uh Slakia, run from fear of being burned to death and into their own captivity. So imagine that they would set traps up against us to have us to run and right into their traps, right? It says now these where you see these other slavers, the European came and they conquered us. So you see that it wasn't just Arabs and Hamites, right? They took parts of it too, right? The Europeans, the white Edomites that the Bible speaks about of being the damn devil, they came and took parts of it, right? And they they learned and what they saw the Arabs doing, right? So it wasn't just Arabs and Africans. It was the so-called white people came into when they came into power. Now, let's go to the book of Joel, chapter 3 and verse 6. It says, the children of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have he sold to the Grecians. Let me start up. Let's start at verse 3. It says, and they cast lot for my people. And they cast lot for my people and have given a boy for a harlot and sold a girl for wine that they may drink. So they will take these men and they'll use them as sex reproduction, right? And they sold these women for wine, meaning for their sexual desires, right? It says, yea, and what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon? Remember when we read in the book of Psalm chapter 83 that Tyre and Zidon, these are African tribes. And all the coast of Palestine, where he rendered, now the Palestinians is going to future Arab tribes as well. Will he render me a recompense? And when he recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your own head? Because you have taken my silver and my gold and have carried into your temples to goodly temples my goodly and pleasant things. And the children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have he sold unto the Grecians, that he may remove them from far from their borders. So the Arabs and Africans, the Hamites, they would take the children of Judah, the Israelites, and they would sell it to the Europeans. This right here is what you call the transatlantic slave trade. It's right here in the Bible. Let's go to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28 and verse 68. It says, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. Now, what race of people was brought into Egypt again with ships? And remember, the word Egypt is never a word for bondage, right? The word Egypt is never a word for being captive. We just came as a people, of a nation of people, just came out of Egypt. What condition were we in when we was in Egypt? We was in yokes and bondage when Moses came in and saved us out of Egypt, right? It says through the power of Yahweh Bashem Shah, of course. So it says from the top, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. What race of people that was brought into slavery again with ships? So it wasn't that first time in slavery, but this time they will go back into slavery again in the way of ships. By the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt not see it no more again. And there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. What race of people was sold on cargo slave ships? Take it to a land that we knew not. And we were sold unto our enemies, the different nations, for a slave man and slave woman. And no man shall buy you, meaning that no man redeemed us out of captivity. No man redeemed us from slavery. No man was able to buy us back and say, take my people from the west coast of Africa, take my people from the west coast of the West Hemisphere, from America and the islands over there, and bring them back to the land of Israel. Who did that? Nobody. We're still in a land of our captivity till this day, serving under the oppressions of our enemies. A lot of people are still in chains right now. Let's go to the book of Micah, chapter 2 and verse 1. It says, woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it, because it is in the power of their hand. Right? So this is what the wicked and oppressors and our enemy do. They devise iniquity, right? They think upon how to enslave the Israelites, how to keep them serving idols, how to keep them in sin, right? So we can come and take over their land and put them in captivity. It says, and they cover fields and take them by violence. Then they took us by violence. Then we just read that they would set up war against the other African tribes and have them overcome us, and they will capture us and put us in slavery. Then you see that they will start fires in our villages and set up traps and snares so that they can capture us and put us in their captivity, divide the family, take away our young boys and make them and castrate them and have them serve in their palaces and put them in their armies and stuff like that, and take our women, our young women, ages of 12, and for their sexual desires and pleasures, so they can become their concubines. Didn't we just read this stuff, man? It said they covered the fields and take them by violence in houses and take them away, so they oppress a man and his house, even a man and his heritage. Our people were living years and years and years of oppressed over the trans-Saharan slave trade, wondering if their kids will make it back home, wondering if they can make it back home to their family, wondering if this the day that I'm going to be taken and sold unto our enemies, wondering if this the day they're going to ship me away. They're going to invade my villages, having to look over your shoulder 24/7. You can't even sleep at night. You can't even think straight because you're worrying about the so-called enemies coming to your villages and taking you away. You will never see your family again. You'll never see your kids, your mother, your brother, your husband, your wife. You will never see them again. You had to know that once you capture, you had to live the rest of your life under oppression. Yokes of irons upon your neck, chains upon your feet. They whipping you, killing you, don't even care about you, treating you as half man and half beast, like a damn animal. If this don't make you mad, man, I don't know what's will, bro. Because it's time for our people to wake up and learn your history. Learn that these people do not like us. Learn that these people is your enemies. They are there to oppress us. They are here to oppress us, right? Let's go back to this page real quick. It's locked here. I don't know if I share my screen on that. But we were just at Micah, the second chapter. I'll read it again just in case. It says, woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it, because it is in the power of their hand. And they cover fields and take them by violence in houses and take them away, so they oppress a man in his house, even a man and his heritage. All right, so you see that there was oppressing this man. Slacky, if I didn't share my screen. But I read the book of Joel, chapter 3, verse 3 to 6. And I read Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 49. Matter of fact, I didn't get that. Let's go get that real quick. the book of Deuteronomy. I read Deuteronomy chapter 20 and 68. It's like here. But let's get Deuteronomy. All right, I share this. Make sure I'm sharing my screen this time. Let's remove this real quick. It's like, give me a second. All right, let's go to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28 and verse 49. Right? It says, and the Lord, it's lucky, all right. It said, and the Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. When the white Europeans came over here, did we understand their languages? No. We were speaking our own Hebrew languages. They came in as an eagle, swift as an eagle. What is the European nation represent? They represent an eagle. When you see America got the bold eagle, right? You see the back of your quarter is an eagle. The back of your dollar bill is an eagle. The flag on top of the flag is an eagle. The eagle represent America. It says, let me get that real fast. Let me see if I can find it real fast. Let's see something. Not American Eagle. Hold on. You see this? America, the eagle represents America. That's why you got eagle. Or every time you see this darn American flag, you see an eagle behind it or eagles around it. Because that's what it means when it said it came swift as an eagle. What nation represents an eagle? America. It says, verse 50, a nation of fair countenance, which should not regard the person of old, nor show favor to the young. Did they show favor to the young? No. They castrated us. They took us, our babies, our children away from us. They didn't care if you was an old man, he was walking on cane, if you couldn't barely walk or see yourself. They would take you, enslave you, and sell you to the nations, right? And this is what they did. And have us working on cornfields, cotton fields, wine fields, any type of plantation they have us on. We was working there. Free forced labor, right? Now let's bring this out. Let's get some more images or pages. Which one I want? Let me see if I find it real fast. All right, let's bring this up real quick. It reads, it says, if you were caught in one of these raids, there were thousands of raids every year all over Africa, particularly West Africa. That's where the Israelites was dwelling at. And we was everywhere, but majority of our people was dwelling in the west coast of Africa. It said, and you were a woman, you were a woman, you would most likely be sexual abused, raped, public and private. Gang and individual was a primary form of disempowering a powerful and proud people. It was usually the first act after all were rounded up in shackles and yokes. So they will take our woman, and the first thing they'll do, gang rape them in front of everybody. It said public or private, they would take our women and rape them, right? It says African men, shack, yoke, held at gunpoint, could only look on as their mother, daughter, sister, wife, relative, friend, were put through some of the most degrading act as human could do to another. as a human could do to another. Children were sexually violated in the most brutal way, often leaving them bleeding to death or wreck with trauma. So the men had to sit there and watch them at gunpoint as their mother, sister, wife, relative were being raped and tortured. It says not to mention syphilis or gonorrhea for the white men, often poor, illiterate outcasts. Christianity in their male dominant culture had to disorder sexually. So this was Christians that was doing this. Christians, the so-called Christian white Jesus that our people want to worship and go into these Christian churches, right? These were these people, the Christianity, the white people, right? This is that religion that was doing this. But yet our people want to be in Christianity, want to worship these white Jesus, right? Not knowing that these are the same people that taught you about white Jesus. These people that enslaved our people gave us their religion. It says that the madness of rape and sexual abuse was looked upon as a reward, as proof of their manhood, as evidence that they at least had power over some things the African, and this made them loyal to the company which paid them not only with cash but with sex, bronze, and other symbols. So basically, that these white men, Christians, will take our women and enslave them and rape them, gang rape them in front of the whole people, put our men and put them in yokes of bondage and get gunpoint and force us to watch. And there was nothing we can do about it but to sit there and watch our young daughters, our wives and mother go through so much pain and trauma and being raped publicly, right? And this is what they was doing to our people. Now let's get this real quick. It says for the African women, let's lock it, make sure I'm on track. For the African woman, there was no privacy at any time of the day or night. The captains or businessmen or commanders would sit and select the women or girls he would choose to rape. So it was like pick and choose, right? Oh, I'm gonna pick you, you're mine for tonight. I'm gonna pick you, you're mine for the night. It said if you refuse, you were whipped and then raped. So they would take you and force you, beat you, then rape you. And if you were really resistant, there would be a gang rape, often leading to death or insanity. In addition, the rape and sexual abuse of African men and boys will also be a frequent occurrence. So they would gang rape men, African men and boys. So they wasn't just taking these women and abusing them to their sexual pleasures. It was also doing this to the men and boys too as well, man. These Christians that you worship so much and idolize, he was taking our women and boys and having sexual pleasure with them. It says you can be sure that over the tens of thousands of days and nights of the slave trade, no demented sexual fantasy was left untried upon the bodies and souls of the African captives. So they would take our people from our land and take them, enslave them, and rape them and abuse them. Right? Let's get this real quick. Let's go to the book of Lamentation. Take chapter 5, I'm sorry, verse 1. It says, Lamentation chapter 5, verse 1. It says, remember, O Lord, what has come upon us. Consider and behold our reproach. So remember the Most High. Remember, O Lord, Yahweh, what is come upon us. See all the things that was that was doing to us, raping our women, raping our young boys, raping our young girls, right? Held us of a gunpoint and make us watch what they will do to our women and our wives and the women of our people, right? It said our inheritance is turned to strangers, our houses to aliens. We are often orphans and fatherless, right? They would take our kids from us, enslave them, right? Make them orphans and fatherless, kill their parents, and mothers are as widows. We have drunken our water for money. Our wood is sold unto us. Our nets are under persecution. We labor and have no rest. Right? It said we labor and have no rest. We was given to the hands of our oppressors. Right? Let's jump down to verse 11. It says they vanished the women in Zion, and they ravished the women in Zion. Meaning they what? They would have sexual pleasures with the women in Zion. They will rape them, make them concubines, do their own sexual pleasures to our women, our young girls and women, right? It says, in the maze of the city of Judah. So this is all Bible prophecies, man. It was happening in the Bible, right? It's anything happening in the history of our books, our record books. It's still happening now. It was happening through all these slave trades, like yeah. The sub-Saharan slave trade throughout the trans-Saharan slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade, right? He was taking out women and castrating them. I mean, taking out men and castrating them, taking out women and raping them in front of the whole community, gang raping, beating them, right? And this is what they was doing to our people. Let's go to the book of Second Ezra's, chapter 5, chapter 10. Like, let's make sure I'm sharing. Second Ezra chapter 10 and verse 22. Right, this is a book. This is like the longest verse out the Bible, man. It says, "Our sorcery is laid on the ground. Our song is put to silence. Our rejoicing is at the end. The light of our candlestick is put out. The ark of our covenant is spoiled. Our holy things are defiled, and the name that is called upon us is almost profane. Our children are put to shame." How they put our children to shame? They'll take them, castrate them, take our young women that are the age of 12 to 18 and make them concubines and gang rape them. They are put to shame. Our priests are burnt. Our Levites are gone into captivity. Our virgins are defiled. They would take our women and rape them. Our young wives ravished. Our righteous men carried away, like Daniel and the holy children, man. They was carried away. Jeremiah was carried away. It says, our little ones destroyed. Our young men are brought in bondage, and our strong men are become weak. Because why became weak? Because we was nothing we could do. They had us at gunpoint. We had to sit back and watch our wives, the women of our family, be gang raped, knowing there's nothing you can do. Imagine the trauma that put in our heads, had us thinking that we were supposed to protect them. We were supposed to make sure they're okay. They made us weak. They made us, they took our manhood from us. They castrated us, right? And this is what the things that they was doing to our people. Feeling like our hopes was lost. Feeling like it was nothing we can do. This is the life that we will have to live for the rest of our life, right? Let's get some more. Let's go. Slovakia. Let's go to this real quick. Let's get some more. Yeah, man. So just imagine all the things that they did to our people, man. It's sickening, right? Let's go to this page. It says, this the conditioning, some slave traders call it seasoning, process was intimate and relevant. The goal of the Europeans was to deliver the slave ship a beaten people, right? They was making sure that we was got on that boat and we was a beaten people. They took the damn spirit out of us, right? The hope of us, the spirit of Yahweh Shai was gone from us walking to them slave ships. It said a docile people, a person who saw herself or himself as something less than human. Many captives did give up on the long track of the coast and became passive and part of the living dead. They had seen the experienced brutality, torture, and unspeakable sexual acts on men, women, even children beyond their imagination, and concluded that these white men were evil superhumans destined to keep them forever in torturous bondage. The captured African woman could never look at slavery or the white man without feeling the experience of being violated. And that's crazy that you see today, man, that our black Israelite women will look at these white men now and look at them as their white hope, their Superman. When back in the day, it wasn't like that. It was different. They look at him as goddamn the damn devil, man. Right? That would take us from our people and enslave them and rape them. Now they're looking at him as that superhero. Come save me. The man that have 800 credit. The man that could take me from my family and give me a good life. You see what slavery had done to our people, right? It says, where I left off at, the captured African women could never look at slavery or a white man without feeling the experience of being violated. As a way of surviving, many women removed their souls from what they from what their flesh was experiencing. They It said they dug deep into themselves and became outwardly whatever the white men desired. Imagine that, feeling like your hopes and your hopes is lost, feeling like that you got nothing, there's nothing left in you, no more fight in you, right? Feeling like it is what it is, it's whatever. It said that you feel like your spirit done left you, your soul done left you. You just had to give up and give in because it was nothing you could do about it, right? Let's go to, hold on. Let's go to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, and verse 65. Like here. Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 65. It says, among the nations thou shalt find no ease. Right? That means what? It was no rest, no pleasure among these nations. Neither shall thy soul or thy foot have rest. But the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart and failing of eyes and sorrow of mind. Now, isn't that just a sorrow of mind we just read? That feeling like all hopes is lost, feeling like it's nothing you can do about it, feeling like had to take your mind from what your body was experiencing, feeling like you was a walking dead. That's walking with trembling and failing eyes and a sorrow of mind, feeling like all hopes is lost, feeling like there's nothing you could do about it. Nobody there to save you, nobody to carry you back, to fight for you, right? Let's go to the book of Lamentation. Leviticus, sorry. Leviticus chapter 26 and verse 16. It says, I will also do this unto you. I will even appoint over you terror, consumption, and a burning gall that shall consume the eyes and the sorrow of heart and cause sorrow of heart. Right? It says, you will have a sorrow of heart, and he shall sow your seed in vain, for your enemy shall eat it. I will set my face against you, and ye shall be slain before your enemies. They that hate you shall reign over you, and ye shall flee when none pursue you. So the Most High said he was going to give us to our enemies. Why? Because we basically went off. We went off and started serving the other gods. And he said these things was going to happen. Right? The Most High, his words is going to come to pass. If he says something's going to happen, it's going to happen. It could be now or generations to come. right? Leviticus chapter 26 and 36, and it says, and upon them that were left alive of you, I will send a faintness into their hearts, in the land of their enemies, right? And there's a faintness in our hearts that our hopes is lost. It says, and the sound of shaking leaf shall chase them, and they shall flee as a fleeing from a sword, and they shall fall when none pursueth, right? And they shall fall upon another. They shall fall one upon another as it were before a sword, and none shall pursue, and he shall have no power to stand before your enemies. It says you shall have no power to stand before our enemies. It was no might in our hand, nothing we could do about it. Let's go to the book of Psalms, chapter 143 and verse 3. This is Psalm chapter 143 and verse 3. It says, for the enemies has persecuted my soul. He has smitten my life down to the ground. He has made me to dwell in darkness as those that have been long dead. And we just read this. She said it says that you're like the living dead because your soul left you. Your body and spirit it's not even connected to each other no more. Your spirit separated from your body because you don't want your spirit to understand what your body is going through, from the torture, the slave, the whipping, the rape, all them things that they was doing to us. You really have to separate your mind from your body, because just to bear those things, it would have killed you. It would have put you to death, right? And these are things that they was doing to us. It says, verse 4, it said, therefore my spirit overwhelmed within me, and my heart within me is desolate. It says my heart within me is desolate, man. Right? It was taking the soul from our people and ripping them out. Right? Let's go get some more. Let's go to Soldier. This is a lot, man. This is a lot. This is some real history. Let's bring this out. Yes, make sure I'm on the right thing. Hold on, that's not what I want. This right here. Let's get this. It says there were a few who felt submissive, and collaboration would be a way to survive and avoid public humiliation. But they had a rude awakening to the permanency of slavery. No matter how you try to please your captors, there was no freedom at the end. So these women got deeper into self-hate and hatred of others enslaved African cells and people. They acted white. They looked down upon the African women who were forced to stay in the waiting dungeon and faculties shacks into which the slave pack Africans. These self-hating women had washing privileges for offering sexual favors to the master. They were sexually violated so often that these African women did not live more than a year. That's crazy. You see, it says they too were put on the slave ships and had to continue their favors unusually for the whole white crew at any time and at any place. See this, man? And this stuff don't put a fire in your spirit, man. It's crazy, man, what they were doing to our people. Let's get this real quick. Got to speed up the process real fast. It says branding Africans with slave company emblems or numbers were common over the tens and thousands of days of the slave trade. This often caused severe infections among our ancestors. Infections that lead to fevers, pain so severe that men and women will pass out or scream themselves to sleep. For some, the infection spread and became gangrene, gangrene, forcing the Europeans to cut off their limbs or to kill the Africans outright. After all, he or she would be no good to a slave master with one arm or leg. But even worse, these infections would spread throughout a whole or section of the castle and create death and weaken captured Africans. The infection would spread to pregnant women who would become so ill that they would be forced to abort. See, women that was pregnant, they was forced to abort their children because they were so sick. Sometimes the abortion was induced by the use of herbs and smuggling with them from the villages. Most of the time, they would have to dispense with the fetus without the sanitary care or ceremony so central to their spiritual well-being. See, these are the pain and trauma that our women had to go through, all the diseases that they were suffering from. Um, just on the slave ships. Let's go to get some more scriptures real fast. Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 61. It says, also every sickness and plague which is not written in the book of the law, then will the Lord bring upon thee until thou be destroyed. See, this is some of the curses that we was got to go through because we broke the Most High commandments and started serving idols, right? Let's jump up to verse 22. It says, the Lord shall smite thee with a consumption and with a fever and with an inflammation and with the extreme burning and the sword and the blade and the blasting and with mildew, and they shall pursue thee until thou perish. See, this is the things that our people had to suffer from because we was under the curse. Under the curse of Deuteronomy 28, verse 15 on down. These are the curses, what I'm reading about how our people would suffer under these curses because we broke the Most High commandments. Let's get some more. Let's go to this right here. Don't have that much to go to. Well, actually, I do. It's going to be a little longer than what I thought it was going to be, but we're going to try to speed through this. It says, once our surviving captured Africans arrived to the coastal town, they could smell death and degradation. The slave ports were the most unsanitary of town. The captured Africans were corralled either into tiny shacks known as barbacoons or factories. Among the captives were Africans, artists, and artisans, miners like your blacksmith, potters, weavers, are now jammed into damp, cramped cells. Farmers, priests, musicians, each in this indistinguishable from each other, herded like animals into dark cells to wait. So we've seen that how we read in the book of Babylon Timber 2 that we had our people was smart. Our people was industrial people, carpenters, blacksmith, potters, right? We just read that right here that our people was the same. There was weavers, miners, blacksmith, potters that was sold unto these white Europeans, musicians, right? So this the things that we were doing, that was capturing, right? People, right? We wasn't no slacker. We wasn't no damn savages with damn cloth covering our private parts and hanging from trees and living in huts, man. Our people was well industrial people, man. We have our own community, our own villages, our own doctors and stuff like that. You see what happened after uh, um in the early 1900s, that we had our own community, and we was established community, right? We was overpowering other communities that the Europeans and our enslavers, right? You see what happened on that time of the Oklahoma, right? So it says we was stuck in tiny shacks known as barbacoons. Now I'm gonna get some pictures of what that looked like, the barbacoons. Um, give me a minute. All right, so this is what these were some of the conditions that our people was living in. So these are they was called barbacoon. Look how now these are probably modern day pictures now, but just look how dirty it was. All right, these images now is taken early, but imagine hundreds of years ago, hundred a year ago, how these places look. All right, check this out. So these are the doors out the window our people will look in, and out this window you'll see African European ships that was coming in, and this was a place called No Return. Once you enter into these areas, it was no getting out them doors, right? It was no getting out them doors. Once you're in until you're transported from there into a slave ship and headed all the way over to the west coast of America, right? Let's get some more images. No matter of fact, let's go back to this book. And let's speed this up real quick. What I want. Let's see if I find this page. Give me a second. Let me find this page. All right, here we go. It says the captives would stay 2 or 4 weeks, or sometimes months, waiting for the ship out to be shipped out to the Americans or European. Sometimes thousands would stay for months because the political or economic struggles within the newly developing European nations and or colonies, or they would remain in these hellholes while Europeans rivals will fight or for control of that region or the slave trade. Remember, what the Europeans built castles for two reasons: to fight off invasions from fed up Africans or to fight other Europeans. Often Africans captives would stay for months on end because the slave ships were waiting for still more captives to arrive in the port towns. No good slave ship captives would leave Africa without the full captains would leave Africa without a full or overfilled ship. So you had people that were stuck in these conditions for a very long time until they would fill up them ships, right? And these ships was filled with hundreds of slaves. So our people was be stuck into these tiny barbacoes for damn near months to years until other enslaved Israelites will come and join them, man. Now let's go to this one. It reads, these barbacoes or factories were shacks so small that an adult could hardly stand up in them, usually dirt floors without windows and a door. They would house 30 to 50 Africans of the same sex within a 10 foot by 15-foot floor space. The temperature inside was well over 90 during the day and night. So they would trapped these people inside these darn tiny barbecue things, holes, and it was so damn hot in there, man. Look at the images that is shown that our people was trapped in, right? Let's get some more real fast. All right. So this is a deep dive look into what was happening to our people. Um, right here, let's get this. It says, by the time the people of Africa were herded into the slave castles, many were not only stripped of their clothes and jewelry, but also stripped of their minds, mind, spirit, culture. Many felt humiliated, betrayed by their own countrymen, betrayed even by their gods. These captured Africans chained inside a slave castle either submitted or enslaved, and Christianity, enslavement and Christianity, with the feeling that there was nothing they could do about it or look for ways, either literally or spiritually, to commit suicide. So it was nothing that they could do about it. And they had to be given over to Christianity, right? They felt like their God betrayed them because we were stripped from our culture, our God, so they were serving Christianity, right? Let's go to the book. Let's go back to the Bible. Let's go to the book of. So it said we were stripped from our culture. Our culture is our heritage. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 17 and verse 4. It says, "And thou, even thyself, shall discontinue from thy heritage." Right? Wasn't that what the book that said, that we were stripped from our culture and our God? That I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thy enemies in the land which thou knowest not. For he hath kindled a fire in my anger, which shall burn forever. So we see that this is Bible prophecy. We were stripped from our heritage. We were sold to our enemies. We was given over into their land, right? Let's go to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28 and verse 64. It says, "And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from one end of the earth even to the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers had known, even wood and stone." So we would serve other gods in wood and stone. All right. Let's go back. All right, let's get some more. I'm coming to the end of it, of this. Let's go. I got a few more pages, but I don't know if I'm gonna get all of it. It said the actual transition of the captain's African from dungeon to ship became more Slovakia bureau bureaucratic Slovakia for the pronunciation, as the centuries of the slave rolled on. Initially in the 1400s, the Europeans just forced the survivors of their raids onto their ship with minimal food for a month at sea. But when large corporate concerns, the Catholic Church, right? These are Catholic people, European Christians, right? And the state became involved. There were many hands to grease in a small avalanche of paperwork. Given that the basis of slavery was capitalism, and the capitalism heart was good old-fashioned greed, these partners in the crime of slavery each had elaborated schemes to rip each other off. So you see, Christianity played a major part in our enslavement, right? Played a major part. Um, let's go get this real quick. Let me skip these scriptures and then get some more. has the scriptures line for that, but let's go get this right here. Oh man, let's see something. Let's get pull this up. It says the good ship Jesus, the gift of God, the liberty, the justice, the black boy, the brotherhood, the African glory, Africa, and hundreds of others from the Arab kingdom, Sweden. So these, remember, these are ship names, right? It says, I'm reading again, the good ship Jesus, right? That's one, the gift of God, the liberty, the justice, the black boy, the brotherhood, the African glory, Africa, and hundreds of others from the Arab kingdom, Sweden, Holland, France, Spain, Portugal, England, and the United States were nothing but floating dungeons. For the enslaved Africans, these scribblings on the bow of the ship were translating into even more misery and death. For them, it meant going from one kind of stench to another, more furious kind. Boarding these floating hellholes meant freedom through death. See that people thought that it was more. It's better to basically die than to be enslaved, man. Right? Let's get this real quick. All right. Now this going into the middle passage. All right. So we read about how the Africans enslaved our people. The Arabs was word to us. The Arabs enslaved our people. Now we're reading how they took us from one slave trade to another. All right. Let's see if I can get this up. All right. It says, now just show you that he was Christians. It said Captain John Newitt, a deeply Christian man who was ordained in 1754 into the Church of England, which condoned and profited from slavery, while transporting hundreds of captive Africans on one of his dead ship. Captain Newton penned one of the most famous of all hymns, Amazing Grace. It is ironic that Amazing Grace had become a staple of African American sacred music, often gospel music, often sung by great feelings of at funerals. Many people have thought it to be a African American song. Maybe Captain Newton heard a mournful melody uh, emanating from the African he had brutalized and enslaved that below him. See, now they, you know that song Amazing Grace? Amazing Grace, how sweet the I think there's something, right? That people sing that song at funerals and stuff like that, man. You see it on commercial when they showing young Africans, Hamites that's need food and stuff like that, that's living in a poor condition. They will sing this song, but not knowing that these are slave songs. Hell, damn, he said, look, he even probably made it up, or he heard the melody, the hymn that our people were singing this song. Right? Our people were singing this in slavery. Let's get some more real fast. So that's where that song Amazing Grace came from. It came from slavery. All right, let's remove this. So interesting, messing up on me. All right. All right, we got a few more. It says, of course, some of the white men blame that. We can skip this right here. Let's skip this. So basically, it was saying that the white men will blame that sexual act. And you see, I want to get this one out. Reason why I really want to get it, because if you zoom in right here at this picture, you see that this man right here is holding a cross, and you see that they was doing giving sexual pleasure to the African women. Let's just read a little bit. It said, of course, some of the white men blame that sexual attraction towards African women and girls and men and boys, right, on the African nudity, which of course have been forced upon them by their morally upstanding white captors, was projected into African as a plot to seduce morally upstanding white men. So, because they saw, it says, the white men will see the half naked or naked African men and women, and it will turn them on, man. Right? It will turn that sexual pleasure on to 1 to 100, from 1 to 100, right? And you see, these Christians, man holding a cross in his hand, trying to rape enslaved African or Israelite, we would say, right? Now let's get that. Move this real fast. And you see, these were Christians that was raping our men and women, right? Let's get this. See, it's gonna bring up. Let's try this again. Let's try this again. All right. It says we had to either squat with knees and legs squeezed together and arms folded together, or sit with another person wedged between our open legs for 8 to 14 hours every day for the week or months that it took the cross the that took that sorry that it took to cross the Atlantic. The alternative was to lie flat on our backs for hours or days on wooden decks, broad boards that were splintered and filthy with blood, human waste, parasites, bugs, flies, vomit. We were shoulder to shoulder, chained to each other and chained to the floor or to the ship hull. And you see how the images look right here to how people was chained together. All right. Let's remove this on here. Let's bring up let's bring up some pictures. Hold on. Hold on, give me 1 second. All right, Slovakia. Let's bring this image up. Let's see, can I bring this up? All right. Well, it may not let me bring this up. I'm trying to do this one more time. All right, here we go. So you see how our people was look like damn near sardines in a can. Our people was sitting there looking like sardines. This is called cargo slave ships. Our people was in, right? Fill these ships up with slaves tied shoulder to shoulder, chains wrapped around their necks and arms and legs, so we wouldn't be able to get free, right? This is packed like sardines, man. It's crazy how people were stored up in these ships, right? Sailing for months on time from one end of the coast to another, right? Let's move this. Now let's get some more images. All right, let's go back to this book real fast. Now it says some of our ancestors could not stand. It says some of our ancestors could not stand being in such confined quarters and went crazy, screaming, scratching, punching, kicking, throwing up. They were whipped, kicked, and punched by the crew. Their chain rubbing raw their skin, exposing blood and bones around ankles and wrists. They were embraced, soothed, held down by their comrades. If that did not chill their uh Deldrum, Slakia Deldrum, they were taken up to the deck and whipped into silence or death. Over the centuries, the thousands of days at sea, hundreds and thousands of our ancestors would jump overboard rather than to continue to suffer in the death ride of the Middle Passage. The European slave would try to stop this escape route by hanging heavy nets on the side of the ship to catch leaping Africans. But many would find ways to get through the net. Some would start chewing the 2-inch thick hemp, thereby loosening the fiber enough to use their weight to rip the netting. Some others would try to spread the net wide enough to get their head through, then force the rest of their body part through into the shark-filled ocean. So our people will rather die and get eaten by sharks than to be enslaved and to be stuck on that boat. Some still, some others would hide the splinters from a barrel or a piece of glass and would start cutting the netting before they were damaged onto the deck before they was dragged up on the decks like yeah. So you see, our people they was rather die and jump overboard and be eaten alive by sharks than to be sit there and enslaved by these white devils, man. All right, let's get this image real quick. Let's get to the next page. Almost done reading now. This is a really deep book. I'm trying to tell you, man. You get this book. Gotta get this book. Let's try this again. It says below the deck. You see these images real quick. My people was getting beaten on top of the decks. It said below deck on the slave ship, the temperature was always hot, except for these few ships were held. Ventilators were used like 120 to 130 degrees day and night during the spring and summer months was typical. The humidity rarely dipped below 75 degrees. Usually it was more like 90 degrees. Lice, maggots, and other parasites spread throughout the tightly packed human cargo. In fact, upon arrival at the slave selling ports, every slave ship was disinfected along with the captives. You could not escape being the host for lice in your hair or maggots in your open sores. Dehydration was a major cause of death on a slave ship. Remember, before you board, you are already dying of thirst. And now that you are once again jammed into a dark hole at least 90 degrees with high humidity, you you are even more thirsty. But if you demand water, these ignorant white men just lash out at you with whips or clubs. So you try to learn how to severe and rechannel your energy to minimize. So they was basically keeping us in these damn the depths below. It was so damn hot in there. All right, let's jump to this last one. It says many hours later, when there is no sight of land to tempt you to jump overboard and try to swim home, you are allowed, still in chains in some groups, to come up to the deck for about 10 to 30 minutes, depending on the feeling of security by the crew, or how evil they or the captains want to be that day when you are on. So basically, they was giving us a certain time to be on top of the deck to cool off. All right, so check out these images real quick. This is a picture of our people on top of the slave deck. So this is not a slave deck. This is where the Arabs had us in slavery. And you zoom in here to the left, you see Arabs having our people locked up in chains. This is still during the sub-Saharan slave trade. Let's bring this video out real quick.
From about 1525 to 1866, 12.5 million Africans were taken from their homeland and forcibly shipped across the Atlantic, a journey that almost 2 million of them wouldn't survive. By the turn of the 18th century, European merchants were building vessels capable of transporting hundreds of slaves per journey. These ships had extra portholes for ventilation, weapons mounted on deck in case of rebellion, and additional compartments added below deck to take on more human cargo. Before boarding the ships at African port cities, slaves were stripped of their clothing and remaining possessions and had their heads completely shaved. During boarding, which could take weeks or even months, slaves lived on the deck of the ship in a temporary wooden house constructed by the crew. The crew also installed netting around the deck of the ship, designed to catch slaves who might opt for death over forced servitude. Once moved below deck, slaves would find themselves stuffed into compartments with ceilings as low as 4.5 feet, where they would spend most of their voyage. They were segregated by gender and age. Adult men were kept separately and shackled in pairs. Women usually left unbound in their designated compartment, and children often free to move about the ship. There was no plumbing of any kind. Slaves were forced to relieve themselves where they sat, creating hellish conditions when combined with the heat and lack of ventilation below deck. Disease was rampant. Measles, smallpox, influenza, scurvy, and dysentery, the #1 killer, ravaged slaves and crew members alike. The slaves generally spent about 8 hours a day above deck, but were still separated by gender with a barricado, a reinforced wall that could be used to protect crew members in case of a revolt. Slaves were also subject to forced exercise, sometimes including dance and song for the entertainment of the crew. Disobedient slaves were tortured and beaten, usually whipped with the especially cruel cat-o'-nine-tails, a tool designed to inflict maximum pain. Slaves who refused to eat their typical meal of rice and beans were forced to do so, sometimes with the speculum oris, a medieval tool used to pry open unwilling mouths. Women, while usually left unshackled, were raped and sexually abused by members of the crew, sometimes arriving in the New World carrying the children of their attackers. But it was the women, using their minuscule freedoms, who would often coordinate mutinies against their captors. But these rebellions were rarely successful. The true extent of the horrors of the Middle Passage came to light in a 1783 court trial over the slave ship Zong. The Zong left Africa in 1781 with 442 enslaved on board. After a 2-month journey riddled with navigation errors,
So we're gonna rush right there. You see how people was living on these slave ships, man. Let's get this another video real fast. So that was during the time of our slaves, on this, our life on slave ships. Now let's get this. Now, as we was transporting so-called Africans on slave ships to America. Now you see the condition of our people here in America.
At one point, there were documents where the U.S. government took audio recordings during the 1930s and the 1940s of black people who were former slaves. And a lot of them recalled during slavery, they were degendered to a certain degree, meaning that their individual sexuality was not recognized. The black boys and girls were all treated interchangeably. And a lot of the black males, when they were children, they said that they had to wear dresses. They would put everybody in dresses. And that was a way to degender and to dehumanize a group of people. If you don't look at them as a gender or what their gender is, and you just make them interchangeable, you can dehumanize them to a certain degree. And that was a very common thing during slavery, the degendering of black people.
All right, let's get a few more videos. One-on-one. Let's see. This might be it.
The 18th century, there was a severe depression. Slavery seemed doomed. Then, in 1793, the invention of the cotton gin. Cotton could now be mass-produced, and an economic boom was in the making. Black hands and black backs were needed again to support a land. Who else could work so hard, so long, and so cheaply? But there were dangers in the system. Slaves could run away, or fight, or kill. And so, black codes were established that declared slaves were not persons, but property. These chattels could not leave the plantation without authorization. They could not visit the homes of whites or free Negroes. And for those who had the courage or the foolishness to defy the code, there was the whipping post, branding, prison, or death. As the country moved toward war, white men had established a moral system to meet their needs. At the heart of it was a belief in the Negro's natural inferiority. Slavery was declared not only an economic, but a social good.
Slave people in America were reluctant to accept the religion of their masters. Many owners hoped that Christianity might make their slaves more docile. Many owners hoped that Christianity might make their slaves more docile and encourage them to convert.
On Sundays, niggas had to sit and listen to the white man's sermon. Obey your master, be good servant. Can't tell you how many times I done heard that text preached on. They tell the slave that if he be good, work hard for his master, that he would go to heaven. They tell the slave that if he be good, work hard for his master, that he would go to heaven, and that he gonna live a life of ease. They ain't never tell him he gonna be free in heaven.
And that's what they did to our people, man, too, is make sure they had us under their control, right? So reason why slavery happened, because what happened, we, the Israelites, we turn our back against the Most High. So you see that we was in the transatlantic slave trade, all the way to the transatlantic slave trade, man, right? And no other nation of people can say that they went through the same process. Well, we went through slavery, man. No other nation can say that. Let's go to the book of Daniel. Let's go to the book of Daniel real fast. Daniel chapter 9, verse 11. It says, I'll share my screen. It says, yea, all Israel had transgressed our law, even by departing, that they might not obey the voice thereof. The curse is poured upon us. What's the curse? Slavery. That's the curse. When you read Deuteronomy chapter 28 to 15 on down to 68, the curses is slavery and the oath, slavery and oppression. And the oath that is written in the law of Moses, a servant of God, because we had sinned against him. And he hath confirmed his word, which he spake against us and against our judges that judges, and bringing upon us a great evil, for under the whole heaven have not been done as had done in Jerusalem. So no other nation went through slavery how the Israelites went through slavery. Yeah, you might say the other nations, they went through their little captivity and they might went through some type of slavery, but none of them was like how the Israelites went through, right? Being sold on sold onto ships. I mean, being enslaved and put into ships and sold to another nation, and being castrated, or women getting raped, and all this stuff happened. And our people went through this because we disobeyed the Most High, and this is our punishment, right? Let's go to the book of Amos, chapter 3 and verse 1. It says, "Hear this the word that the Lord has spoken against you, O children of Israel, against the whole family which I brought up from the land of Egypt, saying, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. Therefore, I will punish you for all your iniquities." See, the Most High, he had punished the Israelites for our iniquity, right? I'm going through fast a little bit because I know the time is running up. Baruch chapter 4, and I read once 6 to 8. This is Baruch chapter 4, verse 6. It says, "You were sold to the nations, not for your destruction, but because you moved God to wrath. He was delivered unto the enemies, for ye provoke him that made you by sacrificing unto devils and not to God. He had forgotten the everlasting God that brought you up, and he had grieved Jerusalem that nursed you." So we went into slavery because of what? We had provoked the Most High to end the nation against us. Right, Most High was out. We made the Most High our enemy because what? We broke the commandments. We was once a beautiful race, a nation of people that was once kings and priests. And what happened to Israel? We fell off. Right, we fell off from the top to the bottom, from the heavens to hell. Lamentation chapter 2 and verse 1. "How had the Lord had covered the daughters of Zion with a cloud in his anger, and cast down from heaven unto the earth the beauty of Israel." So the Most High casts us down, right, from kingdomship to slavery. "And remember not his footstool in the day of his anger." It says the Most High had cast us from being a ruler people to a people that is now in servitude, under yokes and bondage, right, serving their enemies. Isaiah chapter 5 and verse 13. "Therefore my people are gone into captivity, because they have no knowledge. Their honorable men are famished, and their multitude are dried up with thirst. Therefore hell hath enlarged herself, and opened her mouth without measure." Now hell represent captivity, right? That's what captivity represent. And hell represent captivity, Slakia. It said, "And their glory and their multitude and their prompt, and he that rejoiced shall descend into it." So all Israel descended into captivity, into hell, into the bottom of the bottom. We was brought low into the other nations and serving them, right? And the Most High did this. The Most High caused this to happen. But what happened? The nations, they took it way too far, right? They thought that the Most High was on their side because of what? They was allowed to oppress Israel, right? They was allowed to oppress Israel to a certain extent, but especially these damn devils, they took it too damn far, man. The so-called white man took it way too far that they actually destroyed the nation of Israel and took away the image of them of their God from them. Right? Let's go to the book of Zechariah, chapter 1, verse 15. It says, "I am very sore displeased with the heathen that are at ease, for I was but a little displeased, and they helped forward the affliction." So the nations forward the affliction more than they were supposed to. right? Because our captivity was only for punishment, right? For breaking the Most High commandments. But these nations, they went too far, right? They started putting yokes of bondage upon our necks, destroying us and castrating us, raping our women, right? We forgot that we was Israelites. They took the name of our Lord from us, right? And oppress us, and they still oppressing us until this very day. Let's go to the book of Ecclesiastes chapter 4 and verse 1. It says, so I return and consider all the oppressions that are done under the sun, and behold, the tears of such were oppressed, and they had no comforter. And on the others, and on the side of their oppressors, there was power, but they had no comforter. So the Most High, well, you look at our oppressions. We have no comforter. We have nobody to comfort us, to take us out of these conditions that we're in. But on the other side, there was power, right? The other nation, they got power over us because it's what? They got military, right? They got guns, they got weapons, right? They got their power, but Israel, we were stripped from our power. Our power is the Most High God. He's our rock. He's our savior. He's the one that come and fight for us. He's the one that lead us out of the captivities and the conditions. He's the one that saved us out of Egypt, right? Let's go to the book of Nehemiah, chapter 9, verse 36. This is the book of Nehemiah, chapter 9 and verse 36. It says, behold, we are servants this day, and for the land that thou gavest unto our fathers to eat the fruit thereof and the good thereof, behold, we are servants in it. And it yielded much increase unto the king whom thou hast set over us because of our sins. Also, they have dominion over our bodies, and have over our cattle at their pleasure, and we are in great distress. See, Israel, we are in great distress, right? They got dominion over our body. They got dominion over our fruits and cattle, right? That's why they are able to chop us down, kill us, and they be found not guilty, like I said in the book of Zechariah, right? That they can, our oppressors and slay us, and they are found not guilty, right? So these people have been oppressing us ever since. Let's go to the book of Job, chapter 35 and verse 9. Right? It says, by reason of the multitude of oppression, they make the oppressed to cry. Right? Who's crying out right now? Who's sitting there weeping in tears, crying to the Lord of the oppression they see daily happen to our people? How Trump got ICE oppressing the Northern Kingdom, how he was pressing the Southern Kingdom over in Chicago, New York, and stuff like that, man. Who been crying out and weeping and crying for the Most High, sighing and crying for the oppression to stop? Nobody's really doing that, man. Nobody is sitting there repenting and hoping that this stuff can go away, that the Most High will come back and save us. It said they cry out by reason of the arm of the Almighty, right? And when we do get together and we do sigh and cry, this is when our captivity comes to an end. Hosea chapter 5 and verse 15. It says, I will, this is what the Most High said, I will go and return to my place till they acknowledge their offense. They seek my face in their affliction. It said, and seek my face in their affliction, they will seek me early. In their affliction, they will seek me early. So when we are afflicted, this is why the Most High is punishing us, because we're not afflicted enough. We're too comfortable in this land, right? We too destroy of a nation to realize that we are oppressed. We too destroy of a nation to realize that we are serving other gods and idols. We too destroy of a nation to realize that we're serving a white God. We're black melanated people serving a white God, and we don't realize that, right? Let's get the book of Psalm chapter 112 verse 5. Right, got a few more for this. It said, for the oppression of the poor, for the siding of the needy will I arise. So the Most High said, look, when they are sighing and crying, then I will rise up and save my people. It said, for the oppression of the poor, for the signing of the needy, now will I arise, said the Lord. I will set him in safety from him that puff up at him. So the Most High is waiting for Israel to sigh and cry. The Most High is waiting to seek revenge. The Most High is waiting to save his people from the hands of that enemy. But no one right now is sighing and crying but the Israelites. No one right now is repenting but the Israelites, but the few that wakes up, right? Let's go get this real quick. The book of Psalms, chapter 50 and verse 21. It says, "For these things thou hast done, and I have kept silent, though doest that I was all." It said, "Thou is that I was altogether such as one as thyself." So these white people, they think that the Most High is on their side because they're allowed to do what they're doing right now. But the Most High said that he's coming with vengeance. And who you think that vengeance is for? And who he's coming to save? Who you think salvation is for? He's coming to save us from our enemies. But I will reprove thee and set them in order before thy eyes. Most High said, I'm going to reprove thee. I'm going to correct you. I'm going to make sure that you seek my judgment, and I'm going to set them, the Israelites, in order. Right? Zechariah chapter 2, verse 8. It said, "For this said the Lord of hosts, after the glory have he sent me unto the nations, which spoil you. For he that touches you touches the apple of his eye." See, these people don't really care or know that we are the Israelites. We are the Most High favorite, right? He chose us. We are his special people. We are the apple of his eye. We're precious to him. And he that touches us touches the apple of his eye. And you think the Most High going to allow that to happen to his people? That these nations not going to have no type of judgment, right? Let's go to the book of Isaiah, chapter 35 and verse 3. It says, "Strengthen ye the weak hands and confirm the feeble knees." Right now, who is weak? Who have feeble knees and weak hands? The Israelites, because we have no hope. We have no strength. We have no God by our side to protect us. It says, "Say to them that are of a fearful heart, be strong, fear not. Behold, your God will come with vengeance, even God with a recompense. He will come and save you." So Moses is telling the Israelites, look, you don't have to be fearful no more. You don't have to be weak no more, because you have a God that's going to come and save you. That you have a God that's coming to save you out of this captivity. You have somebody that actually cares about you, right? Because right now we feel like all hopes is lost. Isaiah chapter 51 and verse 22. "This said the Lord thy God, this said the Lord, this said thy Lord, the Lord, and thy God that pleadeth the cause of his people. Behold, I have taken out of thy hand the cup of trembling, even the drag of the cup of my fury. Thou shalt no more drink it again." So the cup of the trembling and the cup of the Most High fury is the curses of Deuteronomy 28, 68, 15 on down. That's slavery, being oppressed. That is the cup of the Most High fury. It says, "But I will put it into the hand of them that afflict thee, which have said to thy soul, bow down, that we may go over. And thou hast laid thy body as the ground, and as the street of them that went over." So the Most High said that he going to take the oppression, the slavery, and he going to put it to the other nations. And he going to make sure that they get the same thing and even more, right? For all the oppression that they did to his people, the Israelites. Let's go to the book of 2nd Ezra, chapter 15 and verse 36. All right. 2nd Ezra, chapter 16 and verse 56, Lakia. It says, "Like as thou hast done unto my chosen, said the Lord, even so shall God do unto thee, and shall deliver thee into mischief." So the same thing that you did to the Israelites, the Most High going to do to you. What do you think the Most High said that it's a righteous thing to recompense to those that slack it? That means go to real quick. Let's go to the book of 2 Thessalonians, right? 2 Thessalonians chapter 1 and verse 6. "It's a righteous thing to recompense tribulation." There we go. It says, "Seeing that it is a righteous thing with God to recompense tribulation to them that trouble you." So it's a righteous thing to the Most High to seek revenge to all those that trouble us, that had us in slavery. Every single nation that we just named and everything that you just saw that our people went through, the Most High is going to make sure these other nations um, reap the same thing, man, and even worse. The other nations is going through slavery, and the Most High is going to destroy these nations, man, that come against the nation of Israel, right? His chosen people, the apple of his eye. Let's get Isaiah 49 and verse 24. Got three more scriptures, three more. It says, shall the prey be taken from the mighty, or the lawful captive delivered? But thus said the Lord, even the captive of the mighty shall be taken away. Who's the captive of the mighty? The Israelites. We are the captive. The mighty are the other nations. It says, shall be taken away, and the prey, the Israelites are the prey, of the terrible, right? Who's the terrible? The other nations, especially the so-called white man, shall be delivered. For I will contend with him that contended with thee, and I will save thy children. So Mosiah said he's going to contend with them that contended with us. And I will feed them that oppress thee with their own flesh, and they shall be drunken with their own blood, as with sweet wine, and all flesh shall know that I am the Lord thy God. Sorry, I am the Lord that, sorry, read it again. And I will feed them that oppress thee with their own flesh, and they shall be drunken with their own blood, as with sweet wine, and all flesh shall know that I, the Lord, am thy Savior and thy Redeemer, the mighty one of Jacob. So the Most High is going to make sure that all the other nations that oppress us, he's going to know that he is our Savior, right? The other nations are going to know that the Most High is our God, and he can come and save us from the hands of our enemies. Isaiah 41 verse 10. Right? It says, fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee. Yea, I will help thee. Yea, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. So the Most High said, fear not, Jacob, because the Most High is going to give us a strength. He's going to strengthen us. It says, behold, all they that were increased against thee shall be ashamed and confounded. All these nations that increase and got a chance to rise and rule over us and reign over us, they're going to be confounded. They shall be as nothing, and they that strive with thee shall perish. So Most High said, these nations that strive against the nation of Israel, they all going to perish. Thou shalt seek them and shall not find them, even them that contended with thee. They that war against thee shall be as nothing, and as a thing enough. So these nations the Most High is going to destroy. They're going to be not found. They're going to be nothing. For I, the Lord, will hold thy right hand, saying unto thee, fear not, I will help thee. So don't lose hope, Israel. The nations is going to get their punishment. They're going to get judged. They're going to get their reward for all the things that they've done for us. So us as Israelites, the so-called Blacks, Hispanic, Native Americans, we are not to fear. We are not to think that the Most High is not on our side, because he is on our side, and he's going to deliver us from the hands of our enemies. Last scripture, Jeremiah chapter 46 and verse 27. It says, fear not thou, O my servant, and be not dismayed, O Israel, for behold, I will save thee from afar, and thy seed from the land of their captivity. And Jacob shall return and be at rest and at ease, and none shall make him afraid. So the Most High is going to put us back in our land, right? And he's going to what? He's going to destroy these nations. So don't be dismayed. Don't be feeling like there's no hope. Right? Because the Most High, he's waiting on you to sigh and cry. He waited on you to repent. He waited on you to return. Right? And let's get one more scripture, right? Let's get the book of Luke, because this also in the gospel 1 and verse 68. It says, blessed be the Lord God of Israel, for he hath visited and redeemed his people, and hath raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David, as he spake by the mouth of his holy prophet, which have been since the world began, that we, the Israelites, shall be saved from our enemies and from the hand of all that hate us. So the Most High is going to save us from our enemies Israel, we are still serving our enemies. We're still enslaved. It's time to wake up and repent and turn back to the Most High, to perform the mercy promise of our fathers and to remember this holy covenant, the oath which he swore to our father Abraham, that he should grant unto us, that we've been delivered out of the hands of our enemies, might serve him without fear. Because right now we live in our life in fear. We live in our life in doubt. We live in our life like we just have no hope. Right? We can't even serve the Most High the way we want to serve the Most High. But the Most High will return with his only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai, and he's going to put destructions and to our enemies, man. And he's going to save us, the Israelites, out of our captivity. Right? So with that, I pray this lesson was edifying, right? And it's like it. I know this screen is a little blurry, but I pray this lesson was edifying. I hope this lesson gave you some insight of what was happening to our people during the trans-Saharan slave trade, all the way to when it was taken to the barracles, all the way to the ships, through the Middle Passage into the transatlantic slave trade, man, and how our people was oppressed, feeling like all hopes is lost. Our people was getting castrated, our wives getting raped and took and used as concubines. They was raping our daughters at the age of 12 to 18. Young men and sons was going to serving the Muslims and getting castrated at the age of 8, feeling like they can't grow up to be a man, dehumanizing our people, man. Most High do got a judgment against these people, man, and fear not, because the Most High is on our side. He just waiting for us to repent. And with that, I said shalom.